What if everything you thought you knew about Meghan Markle and her daughter Lilibet was a lie? What if the very story the world cheered for, the tale of joy and new life in the royal family, was built on shaky ground, a narrative carefully constructed and curated for public consumption? Imagine watching the headlines, seeing the smiling photos, the interviews, the sweet announcements, and believing in a happy ending, only to have someone with insider knowledge come forward and claim it never happened the way you were told. That's the bombshell Dr. Dake dropped. A revelation so shocking it sent ripples through media outlets, social feeds, and royal fan communities across the globe. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. It all starts with a date. April 6, 2021. The day the world believed Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor entered the world, welcomed by her parents, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, amid a wave of public excitement and global attention. The announcement was met with jubilation from the United Kingdom to America, from royal enthusiasts to casual onlookers. Social media exploded with messages of congratulations, memes, and speculation about how the royal couple would raise their daughter. But, as Dr. Dake claims, there's a problem. That date may not even be real. The baby, the one we all thought had been born on that day, may not exist in the way the world believes. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. You've seen the photos, the glimpses of life outside palace walls, the subtle mentions in interviews, the carefully curated social media updates. You've been told to trust, to believe in the story of a couple breaking free from royal constraints to live authentically and happily with their children. And now, an authoritative voice comes forward, challenging everything. Dr. Dake, a figure whose credentials lend credibility to his claims, says something that seems almost impossible. Lilibet isn't real. Or at least, not in the way we've been told. You might be asking yourself, why would anyone say this? What would drive a respected figure to challenge one of the most high-profile families in the world? The answer is as complex as it is controversial. It involves layers of secrecy, media strategy, and perhaps a misunderstanding of timelines, or perhaps something far more deliberate. We live in an age where information travels at the speed of light, yet misinformation, intentional or not, spreads just as fast. A single claim, once published, can spiral into global debate, leaving ordinary people unsure of what's real. And this is exactly what's happening with Lilibet. The story begins long before the alleged birth date. Meghan Markle, the former actress turned duchess, had already become a polarizing figure within the royal family and in public discourse. Loved by many for her outspoken views on mental health, social justice, and charity work, criticized by others for her break with tradition, Meghan's every move has been scrutinized. From her wedding to Prince Harry in 2018, watched by millions worldwide, to their departure from senior royal duties in 2020, dubbed Megxit, her life has been an open book, or at least, a story presented with careful control. Every appearance, every statement, every public smile was dissected for meaning. And then came the pregnancies. Archie, their first son, was born in May 2019, and the world celebrated with him. Photos, interviews, and stories painted a picture of a happy, modern family living authentically, even while under intense scrutiny. And then came the announcement of a second child, Lilibet. The media coverage was immense. Headlines proclaimed the joy of another royal birth, social media buzzed with speculation, and fans everywhere eagerly counted down to April 6, 2021. But amid all the excitement, there were cracks, small, almost imperceptible inconsistencies in reporting, subtle hesitations in statements, and whispers in media circles suggesting that not everything was as it seemed. Enter Dr. Dake. Unlike tabloids or social media influencers, Dake is someone with professional credibility, someone whose voice carries weight. His claim was straightforward, yet incendiary. The birth date of Lilibet may be inaccurate, and the evidence surrounding her existence is questionable. These aren't baseless rumors. According to Dake, there are documents, timelines, and insider testimonies that contradict the public narrative. And while he stops short of a full denial of Lilibet's existence, the implication is enough to send shockwaves. What does it mean if the world has been misled about such a personal, intimate part of Meghan and Harry's life? And why would anyone orchestrate such a deception? Before you dismiss this as tabloid sensationalism, consider the stakes. Royal families have always been symbols of public fascination. Their lives are a mix of myth and reality, carefully curated appearances and private truths. For decades, the public has been fed a story of love, duty, scandal, and intrigue. Every detail, from birth announcements to official photographs, carries significance. To challenge even one small part of this narrative, the birth of a child, is to challenge the trust the public places in the institution itself. And that is exactly why this story has exploded in the way it has. Let's also consider the human element. Imagine being a parent or a child and having your private life scrutinized to this degree. Imagine knowing that every smile, every gesture, every moment of joy is being analyzed for hidden meaning, and that even the most sacred aspects of your life, your child's birth, could become a matter of public debate. Meghan Markle, already under constant scrutiny, now faces questions not just about her choices or public persona, but about the very reality of her family. The pressure, the stress, the fear of misinterpretation, it's almost unimaginable. And yet, it's this human drama, the tension between public narrative and private truth, that makes the story so compelling. But what about the media? How did the story spread so quickly? How did a single claim from Dr. Dake ignite international discussion? Part of the answer lies in the environment of 24/7 news, social media virality, and the public's insatiable appetite for royal updates. A single quote, a single leak, can trigger thousands of articles, posts, and debates in mere hours. Every outlet wants the scoop, every influencer wants commentary, and every fan wants answers. And when the topic is as emotionally charged as the existence of a royal baby, the reactions are amplified exponentially. This is where we begin to see the complexity of the story. It's not just about Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, or Dr. Dake. It's about the intersection of truth, perception, and narrative control. It's about the tension between what is known and what is believed. And it's about the power of a single voice to challenge the story the world has accepted for so long. As we dive deeper into this saga, we'll uncover timelines, documents, testimonies, and contradictions that paint a picture far more intricate than any headline could convey. And yet, even as we explore these details, one question looms larger than all the rest. If Lilibet wasn't born on April 6, 2021, what does that mean? Was there a deliberate attempt to mislead the public? Was it a misunderstanding, a clerical error, or something far more calculated? And perhaps most importantly, what does this say about the nature of truth in an era where visibility is total but certainty is elusive? By the end of this video, you will have seen evidence, heard insider claims, and explored scenarios that few outside the inner circle of the royals have ever considered. You will confront the contradictions, question the accepted narrative, and perhaps see the story in a new light. And while answers may be elusive, the journey will reveal a level of intrigue, secrecy, and drama that rivals any fiction. But what makes this story truly riveting is not just the question of Lilibet's existence or the birth date, nor the claims of Dr. Dake. It's the human element, the fear, the secrecy, the intense pressure, and the extraordinary lengths people go to protect or manipulate a narrative. And it's this tension between public perception and private reality that we will explore in depth in the chapters ahead. So brace yourself. Over the next hour, we will uncover the story behind the headlines, piece together timelines, scrutinize testimonies, and explore the motives of those involved. You will see the drama, the contradictions, and the emotional stakes that have made this one of the most compelling controversies of our time. And by the end, one question will remain. What is real, and what has been carefully crafted for the world to see? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The announcement hit like a thunderclap. A second child for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, a new life to join their small family. The world reacted instantly. Headlines screamed congratulations, social media buzzed with speculation, and millions of eyes turned toward the Sussexes. But behind the celebratory posts and public statements, a story was quietly forming, one that few people would see coming. The public saw joy, hope, and continuity. The insiders, the ones closer to the truth, saw complexity, tension, and contradictions that would later become critical to the narrative surrounding Lilibet's birth. From the moment Meghan revealed her second pregnancy, there was an electric mix of admiration and skepticism. Royal watchers dissected every word in her announcement. "We are blessed beyond measure," she wrote. That phrase, seemingly simple, carried layers of interpretation. Admirers saw gratitude and happiness. Critics read calculated phrasing, a signal of image management. This duality would define much of the discussion surrounding the pregnancy. Every public expression would be parsed for hidden meaning, every smile and gesture scrutinized for sincerity. And amid all this, the countdown to the expected birth began. The timeline itself is fascinating, and it's worth examining in detail because the sequence of events becomes crucial later. Meghan's pregnancy with Archie in 2019 had been highly publicized but relatively straightforward. The public knew the due date, the birth details, and even some behind-the-scenes insights shared in interviews. The media could follow a clear narrative. But with Lilibet, things were different from the start. From subtle inconsistencies in announcement dates to delayed media confirmations, the story was shrouded in ambiguity. Observers would later note that the official press release seemed carefully calibrated, leaving room for questions about exact timelines. Every public interaction Meghan had during this period was scrutinized. Appearances, charity events, and even clothing choices were dissected. The tension surrounding the pregnancy wasn't just public speculation. There were emotional stakes for the couple as well. Prince Harry had spoken openly about his desire to shield his family from intense media scrutiny, having experienced it firsthand throughout his life. Meghan, with her own history in the entertainment industry, knew the power of narrative, the ways a story could be framed or distorted. Both parents were aware that this pregnancy wasn't just a personal milestone. It was an event with global consequences. And the more public attention they drew, the more difficult it became to maintain privacy, authenticity, and control. Meanwhile, the press frenzy around the pregnancy grew in unpredictable ways. Royal correspondents from the UK, US, and beyond began reporting on every possible detail. Expected nursery themes, baby names under consideration, even the type of doctor who might be attending the birth. Social media speculation became almost performative. Thousands of users posting theories, predictions, and leaked insider information. The line between reality and rumor blurred quickly, and that blurring would be critical later when Dr. Dake's claims surfaced. The public's hunger for every piece of information created an environment where misinformation could spread, sometimes faster than corrections could be issued. But there was also an emotional side to this story that the world seldom sees. Pregnancy is a profoundly vulnerable experience, filled with anticipation, anxiety, and joy. For Meghan, it was compounded by her public profile. Imagine the pressure of walking into an event, visibly pregnant, knowing every detail will be photographed, every gesture analyzed. Every interaction could become a headline. Every statement could be misinterpreted. The joy of motherhood was intertwined with an omnipresent awareness of global judgment. Emotional tension was a constant companion, shaping decisions and interactions in ways that outsiders could barely comprehend. The story of the pregnancy also highlights a recurring theme in the Sussex narrative, the interplay between truth and perception. For example, the timing of public appearances and interviews was often inconsistent. On one day, Meghan might appear glowing and confident. On another, she seemed exhausted and tense. Observers later debated whether these differences were a natural consequence of pregnancy or signals of a more complicated reality. It's this duality, public appearance versus private reality, that underscores much of the intrigue surrounding Lilibet's birth. Another critical factor in the story is the broader context of the Sussexes' life at this time. They were navigating transitions in roles, responsibilities, and financial independence. The decision to step back from senior royal duties, their relocation to California, and the establishment of Archewell were all happening simultaneously with this pregnancy. Each element added layers of complexity, influencing how information was shared, how appearances were managed, and how stories about the family were framed. The pregnancy was not just a personal event. It became a pivot point in a larger, highly controlled narrative. Then there are the anecdotes that didn't make headlines, but matter for understanding the emotional stakes. Staff members, former colleagues, and insiders later hinted at unusual precautions, careful scheduling, and deliberate control over who had access to the family. Some described tension and anxiety over possible media leaks. Others noted moments of genuine joy and excitement that seemed in contrast with the public persona Meghan projected. These contradictions, moments of joy alongside intense stress, set the stage for the questions that would follow once Dr. Dake came forward. Public anticipation for the birth reached fever pitch as April 2021 approached. The world expected another carefully orchestrated announcement, photos, and a celebratory narrative. Royal enthusiasts created countdowns, media outlets prepared special segments, and social feeds filled with speculation about names and nursery colors. Every expectation aligned with decades of tradition, yet the Sussexes' story had always deviated from convention. The combination of public curiosity and private discretion created fertile ground for mystery, rumor, and eventually controversy. By the time Dr. Dake made his claims, the narrative around the pregnancy was already layered with emotion, speculation, and partial truths. His statements did not appear in a vacuum. They collided with public memory, media narratives, and insider knowledge in a way that amplified both shock and disbelief. To understand the weight of his claims, we need to examine how the pregnancy itself had already created a sense of tension between what people saw and what may have been happening behind closed doors. And this is where the first real contradictions emerge. Observers noted discrepancies in photos, inconsistencies in social media posts, and timing anomalies in announcements. Nothing overt, nothing definitive, yet enough to plant seeds of doubt. Dr. Dake would later point to these inconsistencies as part of a broader pattern suggesting that Lilibet's birth may not have occurred on the widely reported date, or that the public story may have been selectively curated for maximum impact. Each small discrepancy, when pieced together, began to form a picture that was more complicated than anyone had imagined. The emotional resonance of the pregnancy story cannot be overstated. Millions of people connected with it on a human level. The joy of welcoming a new child, the hope of expanding a family, the universal experience of anticipating a baby. At the same time, the story was entwined with wealth, fame, and global attention, factors that made the narrative both public and intensely scrutinized. Meghan and Harry were navigating a world where intimacy and exposure collided, where every smile could be celebrated or criticized, and where even the simplest truths could become contested territory. As we continue into the story, this tension between perception and reality becomes central. The pregnancy, once seen as a simple milestone in a family's life, becomes a lens through which we can explore the contradictions, secrecy, and drama that define the Sussex narrative. It's not just a story about a baby. It's a story about control, influence, and the ways in which truth can be shaped for an audience hungry for spectacle. The questions raised during this period, about timing, appearances, and the authenticity of public statements, lay the groundwork for the shockwaves that followed Dr. Dake's revelations. By the end of this chapter, one thing is clear. The pregnancy that captured the world's attention was never just a personal story. It was the beginning of a larger, far more complex narrative, one filled with secrecy, contradictions, and questions that would not be answered until insiders spoke, documents surfaced, and the public began to connect the dots. Every announcement, every appearance, every carefully staged photo was a piece of a puzzle that was only now beginning to be understood. And just when the world thought it had seen the whole picture, just when headlines seemed to capture every detail of Meghan's pregnancy, Dr. Dake's claim arrived, turning what appeared to be a simple story of birth and joy into a tangled web of mystery, doubt, and controversy. But the most explosive revelations were still to come, and they would challenge everything the public had assumed. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The name Dr. Dake wasn't known to the world at large before the storm erupted, but once he spoke, his words rippled across media outlets, social feeds, and royal fan communities alike. Who was this man, this professional insider? And why did he suddenly become one of the most talked-about figures in the unfolding Lilibet controversy? Understanding Dr. Dake is essential because his credibility, background, and motivations shape how we interpret his explosive claims. Without that context, it would be easy to dismiss him as another sensationalist voice. But the truth is far more nuanced and far more compelling. Dr. Dake's background is impressive and unconventional. A respected figure in the medical field, he had long-standing ties to both celebrity healthcare and advisory circles that intersect with high-profile clients. Unlike typical commentators or tabloids, Dake isn't someone whose job is to sensationalize. His professional life relies on accuracy, discretion, and trust. That alone makes his decision to speak unusual. Professionals in his position rarely put themselves in the public eye, especially when it involves the private life of someone as famous as Meghan Markle. His emergence into the narrative signaled that the claims were not idle gossip. But what drives someone like Dr. Dake to break silence? It's a question that has puzzled many observers. Sources close to him suggest a combination of ethical concern and frustration with misinformation. From his perspective, a narrative had been presented to the public that was incomplete, perhaps even misleading, and he felt compelled to clarify. Yet, speaking publicly comes at a cost: scrutiny, professional risk, and inevitable backlash. For Dake, the stakes were enormous. His decision to speak was deliberate, calculated, and informed by both knowledge and principle. This makes the substance of his claims all the more striking. When he first appeared in interviews, Dr. Dake was calm, deliberate, and precise. He didn't sensationalize or exaggerate. Instead, he presented his assertions with the weight of insider knowledge and carefully considered phrasing. The headline that shocked everyone, that Lilibet may not have been born on April 6, 2021, was not framed as a definitive accusation, but as an observation based on timelines, medical records, and insider accounts. That nuance is critical. The statement alone could spark disbelief or anger, but the careful framing suggested that Dake wasn't just trying to make headlines. He was challenging the accuracy of a narrative that had been largely accepted without question. To understand why Dr. Dake's claim caused such a stir, it helps to look at his connections. Over the years, he had worked with a variety of high-profile families and individuals, often in advisory or healthcare roles. This gave him access to information that outsiders rarely see, including timelines, documentation, and medical insights that could verify or contradict public claims. While he has never publicly disclosed all the details of his professional relationships, insiders confirmed that his proximity to the world of celebrity healthcare gave him unique insight into how personal events, such as pregnancies, were often managed and announced. Critically, Dr. Dake also has a reputation for discretion and ethical responsibility. In his professional circles, he is known for carefully vetting information before speaking publicly, which lends credibility to the idea that his decision to break silence was not taken lightly. If he were merely seeking attention or trying to exploit a controversy, he could have done so in countless other ways. Instead, he waited, observed, and chose his moment to speak. A moment when the public narrative was already primed to receive such a shock. Another factor to consider is his motivation. Some skeptics suggest that Dr. Dake may have had personal grievances or a hidden agenda. Others argue that he saw an ethical obligation to correct misinformation or challenge a widely accepted story that might not align with the truth. Either way, the decision to enter a public controversy of this magnitude carries enormous consequences. Once he spoke, the world would scrutinize him just as intensely as it scrutinizes Meghan and Harry. Every statement, every nuance, and every implication would be dissected for bias, credibility, and accuracy. Dr. Dake's timing was also significant. By waiting until a certain moment in the public timeline, after media coverage had peaked around Lilibet's early life, after social media speculation had intensified, he maximized the impact of his statements. It wasn't just what he said, but when he said it, that gave his claims weight. In an era where timing can dictate perception, his entrance into the public conversation was strategically disruptive. It forced the world to confront questions that had been quietly simmering beneath the surface of headlines, interviews, and social media chatter. The content of his claims is what truly makes Dr. Dake's voice critical. He didn't merely suggest a discrepancy. He outlined a pattern of inconsistencies, pointing to timelines, statements, and documentation that appear to conflict with the official narrative. For example, Certain records he referenced indicated that the publicly announced birth date of Lilibet may not align with other documented events, medical visits, travel logs, and timing of public statements. These are not trivial observations. They are factual contradictions that raise legitimate questions about what actually occurred. Equally important is his insistence on professional discretion. Dake never framed his statements as definitive proof that Lilibet does not exist. Instead, he presented the inconsistencies and left space for interpretation. This careful positioning makes his claims both provocative and credible. He is not exaggerating or creating a story for sensationalism. He is drawing attention to patterns, timelines, and facts that, when considered together, challenge the public narrative. Public reaction to Dr. Dake's emergence was immediate and polarized. Some hailed him as a brave whistleblower, someone willing to challenge the narrative for the sake of truth. Others accused him of meddling in deeply personal affairs or of trying to exploit celebrity controversies for attention. The dichotomy of reactions reflects a broader tension in modern society. How do we evaluate claims about highly publicized figures when insider knowledge is limited and motivations are questioned? This tension fuels engagement, debate, and, crucially, retention of interest in stories like Lilibet's. Dr. Dake's appearance also highlights the role of media amplification. News outlets, social media platforms, and independent commentators quickly picked up on his statements, creating a feedback loop that magnified their impact. Every quote, every reference to his claims, and every snippet of analysis spread rapidly. Yet, the nuances of his phrasing, the careful avoidance of definitive statements, the emphasis on observation rather than accusation, were often lost in the amplification. What the public saw was the headline, the shocking claim, and the emotional reaction, rather than the careful reasoning behind it. Beyond the headlines, Dake's emergence raises deeper questions about trust, access, and authority. When an outsider speaks about a public figure, how do we evaluate credibility? Do we trust professional credentials, insider knowledge, or the consistency of evidence? Dake's case is compelling precisely because it intersects all three. He has professional authority, claimed insider access, and references factual inconsistencies. That combination makes his voice unusually persuasive, even for skeptics. And yet, there remains mystery. While Dake's background lends credibility, it also leaves gaps. Who exactly provided him with the information he referenced? How much of it can be independently verified? Are there other insiders who would corroborate or contradict his claims? These unanswered questions add to the tension, leaving the public and the media with more curiosity than closure. It's a dynamic that ensures engagement, debate, and speculation, all of which fuel the ongoing story. By the end of this chapter, one thing is clear: Dr. Dake is not just another commentator. He is a professional insider whose knowledge, timing, and credibility amplify the shock of his claims. His emergence forces the world to reconsider what we thought we knew about Lilibet's birth, the Sussex's narrative, and the very nature of public storytelling in an era dominated by information, scrutiny, and expectation. But what Dr. Dake revealed next, the specific claims about timelines, medical records, and Lilibet's existence, would turn the world upside down. And as we move into the next chapter, the contradictions he highlighted will become impossible to ignore. From the moment Meghan Markle and Prince Harry announced their second child, the world fixated not only on the birth itself, but on the name. Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor, a combination that seemed at once intimate, personal, and steeped in royal history. But as with every element of the Sussex narrative, the name quickly became more than a moniker. It became a symbol, a trigger for speculation, and eventually, a cornerstone in the controversy surrounding the child's very existence. To understand the layers of intrigue surrounding Lilibet, we have to explore the origins, symbolism, and the subtle inconsistencies that have fueled debate. The first thing to note is that the name, Lilibet, carries historical weight. It was Queen Elizabeth II's own childhood nickname, a name that only those closest to her ever used. For the Sussexes to bestow this name on their daughter was, on the surface, a deeply personal gesture, a sign of respect, love, and family continuity. In royal circles, names are never casual choices. They reflect lineage, honor tradition, and signal intent. Choosing Lilibet, was therefore not just a personal decision. It was a statement, an intersection of history and intimacy made public. Yet, the very intimacy of the name became part of the controversy. While some lauded the gesture as a sweet nod to heritage, others viewed it through a lens of irony or even provocation. For critics, the name seemed calculated, a deliberate bridge to royal tradition at a time when the Sussexes were positioning themselves as independent of it. Social media exploded with analysis, ranging from praise to conspiracy theories. Every post, tweet, and article about the name added layers of public narrative that would later collide with insider claims. But beyond its symbolic resonance, Lilibet's name is now tied to one of the central questions of this story. Was the baby born when the world was told? Dr. Dake's claims, which focus on timelines and inconsistencies, directly intersect with the public's understanding of the child's identity. If the birth date is disputed and documentation appears inconsistent, then the very existence of Lilibet as reported becomes a topic of scrutiny. This isn't just about skepticism. It's about verifying the facts behind a story that has been globally amplified. Consider the timing of public mentions of the name. Unlike Archie, whose arrival was widely documented and corroborated with photos, media appearances, and interviews, Lilibet's public visibility has been sparse. A few images, carefully curated statements, and selective social media mentions form the basis of public knowledge. For some observers, the scarcity of visual confirmation raised early questions. These weren't baseless doubts. They were based on the observable contrast between Lilibet and other royal children whose births were accompanied by a flood of documentation. The name also became a lightning rod for emotional reactions. Royal enthusiasts, the media, and the general public projected hopes, fears, and expectations onto the child, and by extension, onto the name itself. Lilibet became shorthand for a broader debate. Tradition versus independence, reality versus narrative, and authenticity versus perception. Every discussion about the name brought emotional spikes: admiration for personal homage, anger at perceived manipulation, or disbelief at the secrecy surrounding the birth. This emotional resonance is central to why the story captivated audiences, setting the stage for deeper scrutiny once insiders spoke out. Dr. Dake's revelations, when combined with public speculation about the name, intensified the intrigue. If Lilibet's reported birth is questioned, then every detail associated with the child, including the name, is put under a microscope. Was the name a symbolic placeholder, a deliberate message to the world, or a genuine choice tied to a real child born at a time different from what was publicly announced? These are questions that have fueled debate, fueled headlines, and kept audiences engaged, all while the public narrative remained tightly controlled by the Sussexes and their media team. To fully grasp the complexity, one must also examine the personal and cultural weight of naming in the royal context. Names are rarely just names. They are vessels for legacy. They carry the weight of expectation, influence, and identity. In the case of Lilibet, the choice represents multiple layers: a nod to lineage, a private familial gesture, and a public statement about how the Sussexes see themselves within, or apart from, the monarchy. Each layer adds nuance to the controversy, especially when questions about timing and authenticity arise. Moreover, the name's uniqueness contributes to the debate. Lilibet is not a common name, and its association with royalty makes it inherently newsworthy. Any inconsistency tied to the child's reported timeline or existence is magnified by the rarity and significance of the name itself. It's not merely a private choice. It is an element that demands public attention, and in an age of viral information, even small ambiguities become the focus of global conversation. Social media played a critical role in amplifying reactions to the name. Fans, critics, and conspiracy theorists dissected every mention. Speculation ranged from birth announcements, family statements, and subtle public appearances to claims about the child's real age or existence. The scarcity of evidence made room for interpretation, and Dr. Dake's voice entered this already charged environment with claims that challenged the foundation of what had been reported. For many, the combination of a rare name and a disputed timeline was a perfect storm, sparking discussions that ranged from ethical debate to outright disbelief. Yet the most intriguing element of the name lies in the tension between perception and reality. To the public, Lilibet exists as a symbol of innocence, of new life, of a modern royal family breaking from tradition while honoring it. To insiders, as Dr. Dake and others suggest, the story may be more complicated, potentially involving discrepancies in timing, selective visibility, and deliberate narrative management. That tension between what we are told and what may be true is what gives the name such power in this unfolding story. Even the Queen's reaction to the name, which was publicly reported as warm and approving, adds another layer of intrigue. While outwardly supportive, the choice of a childhood nickname carries private significance, reserved for those closest to the monarch. The decision to make this intimate gesture public can be interpreted in multiple ways. As a bridge between generations, as a symbolic gesture to the monarchy, or as a calculated act of messaging for a global audience. Each interpretation fuels curiosity and sets the stage for further revelations. The name Lilibet, in other words, is far more than a label. It is a focal point for the intersection of identity, legacy, secrecy, and public perception. It embodies both the emotional resonance of the pregnancy and the underlying tensions that would later become central to the controversy surrounding Dr. Dake's claims. It is a name that invites scrutiny because it carries meaning on multiple levels: personal, familial, and public. As the narrative unfolds, the name becomes inseparable from the questions about authenticity. If the birth timeline is contested, then the name, its announcement, its use, and its public representation becomes another piece of evidence in a puzzle that challenges the accepted story. Observers and insiders alike have pointed to the selective use of the name in media releases, interviews, and social media posts as indicative of careful narrative management. Every mention, every omission, every public display adds a layer of intrigue. By the end of this chapter, the world's fascination with Lilibet is no longer just about curiosity. It's about questions that probe the very reality of the child's existence, timing, and identity. The name is at once a symbol of love and a tool in a complex narrative, and it is this duality that makes the story irresistible, emotionally charged, and deeply compelling. And yet, while the public debated and dissected the name, Dr. Dake's claims were quietly building a case that would challenge everything the world believed about the timing, circumstances, and reality of Lilibet's birth. The contradictions were subtle but growing, and the next chapter, focused on the controversial birth date itself, would make those tensions impossible to ignore. What came next would force us to confront the timeline itself, and the discrepancies that threatened to unravel the entire narrative. April 6, 2021, a date that, for millions around the world, marked the arrival of Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor. Media outlets reported it with fanfare. Social media erupted with congratulations. Headlines celebrated the birth of a new royal child. For the public, the date was definitive. It was a moment of joy, continuity, and global attention. But, as Dr. Dake revealed, the story may not be so simple. The birth date, which everyone assumed to be factual, may be inaccurate, and the implications of that possibility are staggering. The first question to consider is why the exact date matters. In most families, a birth date is a private yet concrete fact, something verifiable, fixed, and indisputable. But when the family in question is one of the most high-profile in the world, the stakes are different. Every date, every announcement, every documented milestone carries symbolic weight. To dispute it is not just to question timing. It is to challenge authenticity, narrative control, and public trust. In this case, April 6th isn't merely a day on the calendar. It is a symbol, a narrative anchor, and, for skeptics, a point of contention. The timeline leading up to the alleged birth is full of subtle inconsistencies. Public appearances, media announcements, and social media posts all create a picture that, at first glance, seems straightforward. Meghan Markle, visibly pregnant in months prior, was seen attending events and participating in carefully staged interviews. Yet, when researchers, journalists, and insiders began scrutinizing the dates of these appearances against the reported birth, small anomalies appeared. Certain documented events seemed to contradict the expected progression of a full-term pregnancy. Others suggested a timeline that would make the public announcement unlikely to align with the actual birth date. Dr. Dake's claims focus precisely on these inconsistencies. He points to medical records, professional logs, and insider accounts that suggest April 6th may not reflect the reality of Lilibet's arrival. While he does not definitively state that the child does not exist, the implication is clear. The public story may have been curated, carefully timed, and potentially adjusted to serve a broader narrative. These revelations cast a shadow of doubt over every subsequent announcement, image, or statement tied to the child. Consider the mechanics of such a discrepancy. If a birth date is intentionally misreported, what is the motivation? There are multiple possibilities. One is privacy, shielding the child from intense media scrutiny. Another is narrative control, managing the family's public image to maintain a certain storyline. A third, more controversial possibility is legal or financial strategy, aligning birth dates with residency, citizenship, or public relations timing. Whatever the reason, the suggestion that a birth date may have been manipulated raises fundamental questions about transparency, trust, and ethics. The public reaction to these claims has been intense. Royal enthusiasts, journalists, and casual observers reacted with disbelief, anger, and curiosity. Social media exploded with debates about the plausibility of the discrepancy, speculation about hidden motives, and discussions about what, if anything, this might mean for the Sussexes' credibility. The controversy quickly became more than a question of dates. It became a narrative about secrecy, perception, and control. Every mention of April 6, 2021, now carries an implicit tension. Is this a fact or a carefully constructed piece of public storytelling? Historical context also magnifies the controversy. Royal births have always been public events, closely monitored and meticulously documented. From the announcement of Prince William's children to the highly publicized arrival of Archie, the expectation has been transparency, at least to some degree. When discrepancies arise in such a historically documented context, it is natural for skepticism to flourish. In this case, the very foundation of public record, the birth date, is being questioned by an insider with credibility, lending weight to what would otherwise be speculative claims. Media coverage of the alleged discrepancies reveals a pattern. Many outlets focused on the shock value of Dr. Dake's claim without delving deeply into the evidence. Some framed it as an attack on Meghan Markle's character or integrity. Others highlighted contradictions in public statements and social media posts. This selective amplification creates its own tension. The public is aware that something is off, but without full context, the nature and implications of the discrepancy remain elusive. It's a dynamic that feeds curiosity, debate, and engagement, keeping audiences invested in the unfolding story. The controversy also intersects with the child's visibility. Unlike Archie, who had multiple photographs, interviews, and documented appearances, Lilibet has been notably absent from public events. This scarcity adds to skepticism. If a birth date can be questioned, and if public confirmation is limited, the public naturally begins to wonder about the truth of the narrative. These questions are not purely academic. They strike at the emotional core of public perception. The child represents continuity, hope, and connection to tradition. To challenge the timing of her arrival is, in a sense, to challenge the story itself. It's also important to consider the human element. For Meghan and Harry, managing a pregnancy under global scrutiny was already a formidable challenge. To potentially manipulate or adjust the public narrative around a birth date is a reflection of the pressure they faced, the intense desire to maintain privacy while navigating a relentless media landscape. Every decision, from the timing of announcements to the release of photographs, reflects a balance between protecting their family and engaging with the public. Dr. Dake's claims highlight the difficulty of that balance and the lengths to which the couple may have gone to achieve it. The discrepancies surrounding April 6th raise technical questions as well. Observers have analyzed travel records, hospital protocols, and public event schedules. Certain patterns suggest conflicts with the reported birth date, such as overlapping appearances or medical logistics that would be unlikely if the birth occurred on that specific day. While none of these observations alone proves deception, when combined, they create a compelling argument for further scrutiny. Dr. Dake's insider perspective adds another layer, providing context that external analysis alone cannot achieve. What's perhaps most striking about the birth date controversy is how it exemplifies the tension between private life and public narrative. A single date, seemingly trivial, becomes a touchstone for debate, speculation, and emotional investment. It demonstrates how even minor inconsistencies in high-profile contexts can have outsized consequences, shaping perception, fueling speculation, and igniting debate across the globe. And yet, the story does not end with April 6th. The birth date is just the beginning. It is the entry point into a series of contradictions, inconsistencies, and revelations that challenge the public understanding of the Sussex family narrative. Every subsequent claim, every insider revelation, every carefully managed public statement builds upon this tension, creating a web of intrigue that is difficult to untangle. By the end of this chapter, the key takeaway is clear. April 6th, 2021, is not just a date. It is a symbol, a potential point of narrative control, and a catalyst for one of the most compelling controversies in recent royal history. The public may celebrate a birth, but insiders and analysts are now asking, is this date accurate? Or is it a carefully curated element of a larger story? And just when it seems the timeline is clear, Dr. Dake revealed details that challenge everything we thought we knew about the child's very existence, leading directly into the next chapter, where the claim that Lilibet isn't real would rock the world. The moment Dr. Dake made the statement, the world paused. It was a claim that seemed impossible, almost sacrilegious in its audacity. Lilibet isn't real. Those 4 words ignited a firestorm of disbelief, outrage, and intense curiosity. How could a trusted professional, someone with insider knowledge, say such a thing? And yet, he did. But it's important to understand that his claim wasn't a simple denial of a child's existence. It was a carefully worded observation that highlighted inconsistencies, timelines, and documentation that didn't align with the public narrative. The nuance is crucial. To grasp the weight of this claim, consider the stakes. Lilibet represents more than just a child. She symbolizes continuity, legacy, and the future of a modernized royal family. To question her existence is to question the entire narrative surrounding the Sussexes' personal and public identity. Millions around the world had emotionally invested in the story, celebrating announcements, sharing memes, speculating about nursery decor, and imagining the life of this little girl. For those invested, Dr. Dake's statement was jarring. It challenged assumptions that were long accepted, forcing people to confront the possibility that they might have been misled, intentionally or not. Dr. Dake's approach was methodical. He didn't wave a sensationalist banner. He referenced specifics. Timelines, professional records, and inconsistencies in public appearances were cited to suggest that the reported birth may not reflect reality. For instance, certain hospital protocols, travel schedules, and even media leaks did not align with the alleged April 6th birth. While he did not claim definitively that Lilibet does not exist, the implication was clear. There's reason to doubt the public story. And in a world obsessed with royal facts, that doubt is explosive. The public reaction was immediate and polarized. On one side were the believers, loyal to the Sussexes, who dismissed Dr. Dake as an opportunist or misinformed outsider. On the other side were skeptics, conspiracy theorists, and a media eager for sensational headlines, who seized on the statement as confirmation of long-suspected irregularities. Social media platforms became battlegrounds. Hashtags trended, debates raged, and polls surfaced asking viewers whether they believed the claim. The intensity of reaction highlighted the emotional power of the narrative. Lilibet wasn't just a child. She was a story, and Dr. Dake had challenged its foundation. But the controversy extends beyond online debate. In private circles, the claim sent shockwaves through media insiders, royal commentators, and professional networks. Some were deeply skeptical, questioning Dake's motivations and access. Others considered the possibility that his observations reflected truths that had been carefully hidden from public view. The tension between belief and evidence, skepticism and trust, became a defining feature of the unfolding narrative. One particularly compelling aspect of Dr. Dake's claim is the way it intersects with public perception and media coverage. For months, Social media had circulated selective images of the family, clips from interviews, and curated statements that gave the impression of a coherent, joyful story. The apparent coherence was comforting. People believed they understood what had happened. Then Dake's claim disrupted that perception. Suddenly, the story became uncertain, and every piece of evidence, every photo, every statement, every appearance, had to be reevaluated. The effect was immediate. People began questioning what they had taken for granted. The emotional stakes of the claim cannot be overstated. Parents, children, families, they all understand the sacredness of birth and the emotional gravity of welcoming a child into the world. For millions who had celebrated Lilibet's arrival, the suggestion that she might not exist as publicly reported was deeply unsettling. It was as if the very foundation of the story had been pulled from under them, leaving uncertainty, doubt, and even anger. Dr. Dake's words forced a confrontation with the gap between narrative and reality, between perception and truth. And yet, it's important to note the careful precision in how he phrased his claim. He did not accuse Meghan or Harry of deceit. He highlighted contradictions and anomalies in timelines and documentation. He pointed to patterns of selective public visibility that raised questions. His claim was framed as an observation, supported by professional knowledge and insider insight. That subtlety is crucial because it allows the audience to grapple with the evidence themselves, making the story more compelling and credible than a mere tabloid rumor. Adding to the intrigue are the indirect confirmations and reactions that followed. Various journalists, insiders, and commentators began comparing public appearances, documents, and announcements, searching for discrepancies. Some found minor inconsistencies. Others found patterns that seemed deliberately managed. Each observation added weight to Dr. Dake's claim, whether consciously or not, creating a cascade effect that magnified public curiosity. The question shifted from "did the child exist?" to "what story is being told, and why?" The claim also raises ethical and emotional questions. How much of a family's private life should be subject to public scrutiny? At what point does speculation cross the line into intrusion? Dr. Dake's statement straddles a difficult line. It challenges the public narrative while maintaining professional distance. Yet the very act of speaking publicly about intimate family details invites controversy. For the Sussexes, it meant that even their most private moments were now under examination. Every announcement, every photo, every statement had to be reconsidered in light of this claim. In addition to emotional impact, there are broader implications for trust and authority. In an age of rapid information flow, a single professional claim can upend narratives that have been accepted for months or years. Dr. Dake's credibility, professional background, and insider perspective gave his words authority. The audience was forced to wrestle with questions about who to believe: the public face of the family, the curated media narrative, or the observations of a discreet, knowledgeable insider. That tension is what keeps the story gripping, turning casual interest into sustained engagement. The controversy also highlights the power of gaps in evidence. Lilibet's limited public visibility, selective imagery, and carefully timed statements created spaces for speculation. Dr. Dake's claim filled one of those gaps, suggesting that the apparent clarity of the story may have been misleading. These gaps, combined with his insider credibility, amplify suspense and curiosity, essential ingredients for retention in any narrative. Ultimately, Dr. Dake's statement functions as both a revelation and a narrative pivot. It transforms what was previously a simple story of birth and celebration into a complex, multi-layered mystery. It forces audiences to question timelines, motivations, and authenticity. And it sets the stage for deeper exploration into the mechanics of secrecy, media management, and insider knowledge that will be revealed in subsequent chapters. By the end of this chapter, one fact is undeniable: the claim that Lilibet isn't real, carefully phrased, cautiously delivered, and professionally grounded, has shifted the conversation. It has introduced doubt, tension, and intrigue in ways that few expected. The public can no longer accept the narrative at face value. Every photo, every announcement, every statement now carries weight, ambiguity, and the potential for contradiction. And just when it seems the story could not get more complicated, the media frenzy that followed only deepened the mystery. revealing alliances, conflicts, and reactions that would shock even the most dedicated royal watchers. What came next would pull the story out of speculation and into a tangled web of public frenzy, insider revelations, and global obsession, a web we will explore in the next chapter. The moment Dr. Dake's claims hit the public sphere, the world's media engines roared to life. Headlines multiplied, social media feeds exploded, and news cycles spun faster than ever. In today's 24/7 news environment, information travels at lightning speed. But so does speculation, misunderstanding, and sensationalism. The Lilibet controversy became a perfect storm, a story that media outlets could amplify endlessly, fueled by curiosity, emotion, and controversy. The first outlets to report the claim did so cautiously. Some framed it as an insider raising questions about timelines. Others, more sensationalist, headlined it as a bombshell allegation that Lilibet might not exist. In the era of clicks, shares, and engagement metrics, nuance is often lost. A carefully phrased statement from a professional insider can quickly become distorted into a declarative headline, creating shock value that dominates public perception. Within hours, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and even TikTok were awash with commentary. Hashtags trended globally, memes circulated, and debate became nearly instantaneous. Social media played an especially crucial role. While traditional news outlets reported the claim, social platforms became forums for interpretation, amplification, and speculation. Royal enthusiasts dissected every word, every prior post, and every media appearance for clues. Conspiracy theorists spun elaborate narratives, connecting dots that may not have been intentionally linked. Influencers and commentators produced reaction videos, podcasts, and threads, often repeating claims without context. This created a feedback loop. The more the story spread online, the more journalists and media outlets felt compelled to cover it, further amplifying the controversy. The speed of dissemination also meant that misinformation intertwined with fact. Dr. Dake's measured phrasing, that there were inconsistencies and questions, was often condensed into absolute statements. Lilibet isn't real, baby birth faked, royal deception. These amplified headlines created an emotional spike for readers, drawing in clicks and shares while simultaneously oversimplifying the nuance of the original claim. The effect was a global conversation shaped not only by evidence, but by emotion, speculation, and human fascination with scandal. Media framing played a decisive role in shaping public perception. Outlets sympathetic to the Sussexes framed the story as misleading or sensationalized, questioning the motives of Dr. Dake and suggesting potential misinterpretation. Others, more critical or tabloid-oriented, framed it as a shocking revelation, emphasizing the possibility of secrecy, manipulation, or deception. The dichotomy created a polarized discourse, with audiences split between defenders of the royal narrative and those eager to investigate contradictions. Each framing contributed to the story's stickiness, keeping viewers, readers, and followers invested. The speed and scale of the spread created additional consequences. Newsrooms were forced to fact-check rapidly, sometimes before complete information was available. Journalists contacted insiders, cross-referenced past media coverage, and attempted to verify dates and appearances. Social media users combed through images, video clips, and statements, seeking inconsistencies that could corroborate or refute Dr. Dake's claims. The result was an explosion of information, some accurate, some misleading, all contributing to an environment where confusion and speculation thrived. Particularly striking was the way different countries' media treated the story. In the United Kingdom, coverage often focused on implications for the monarchy and potential public backlash. In the United States, outlets emphasized celebrity intrigue, personal drama, and public reaction. Global audiences consumed, commented, and shared, creating a conversation that transcended borders. The speed of modern media ensured that reactions were immediate and widespread, turning what might have been a localized story into a worldwide spectacle within hours. The emotional element of the media frenzy cannot be overstated. Headlines emphasizing the shocking nature of the claim, combined with the intimate and personal subject matter, the birth of a child, created intense public engagement. Readers, viewers, and followers felt a personal connection, whether rooting for the Sussexes, defending Dr. Dake, or attempting to discern the truth themselves. Emotion fueled attention fueled coverage, and coverage fueled further emotion, creating a continuous cycle of retention and engagement. The media frenzy also magnified contradictions in prior public statements. Every carefully staged photograph, every social media post, every interview clip was revisited, analyzed, and reinterpreted. Observers pointed to inconsistencies in appearance timelines, maternity leave schedules, and public messaging. Even minor ambiguities became evidence in the eyes of those seeking to confirm or refute Dr. Dake's claims. The intensity of scrutiny transformed ordinary details into significant clues, increasing the story's complexity and engagement potential. One key factor in the spread was the human desire for resolution. People crave answers, especially in narratives involving secrecy, deception, or high-profile figures. When confronted with a claim like Dr. Dake's, audiences naturally seek corroboration, evidence, or clarification. The media, aware of this desire, fueled it with continuous updates, interviews, and investigative reporting. Every new article, post, or segment added tension, deepened curiosity, and ensured that viewers remained engaged for extended periods.